So our final lesson is on graphing using intercepts, and specifically x-intercepts. And this is where the graph crosses the x-axis. Okay, so we're going to look at x-intercepts and where the graph crosses the x-axis. Just like in our warm-up, if it's already in, what form is this? Factored form. We can use the zero product property to solve for our x-intercepts. So we would take each factor and set them equal to 0. So x equals -3 and x equals +5. Those are the x values. What's going to be my y value if it's an x-intercept? If you look back at your warm-up, what were all the y values if they're x-intercepts? What were the y values? 0, right? They don't move up or down. They're on the x-axis. So really this point is -3, if I wanted a point. And this point is 5, 0. Because they're an x-intercept, so they're on the x-axis. Well, what form is this one in? Standard form. Okay, now we know how to graph in standard form. We can find a vertex and we can create a table of values. But what if I said you had to graph using intercepts? How would I take standard form and graph using intercepts? How do I go from standard form to factored form? You factor. So I need to get this in factored form so that I can find the intercepts. So let's review the super x, because you're going to need it on your final, which is in like 3 weeks. What goes on the top of my super x? A times c. Good. 1 times 1 is 1. What goes on the bottom of my super x? B, which is -2. Up top here is a plus your variable, so it's 1x. And what goes in this one? These ones. The factors. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 1 and add to -2. -1 and -1. So let's check. -1 times -1 is 1. -1 minus 1 is -2. Now, we factored it, but we need to write it in factored form. So 0 equals x minus 1 and x minus 1. What do you notice about these? They're the same. What does that mean? What's going to happen? It's only going to cross the x-axis once. Okay, so x equals 1, or that point is 1, 0. And if it only crosses the x-axis once, it will actually be your vertex. Okay, so if it only crosses once, it will be your vertex. Let's make a note. If the parabola crosses only once, it is the vertex. I have a list of steps for you that I think you can follow, but I'm going to also show you a second way, and I'm going to let you choose which way you want. So before we find the vertex, I want to factor the equation because I want to find the x-intercepts. So I'm going to take equation 1 and we're going to factor it. Okay, so that's going to be our first step for now. So let's factor this first equation. 1 times 16 is 16. B is 10. And then I have a 1x and a 1x. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 16 and add to 10. 8 and 2. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 plus 2 is 10. So in factored form, I have x plus 8 and x plus 2. So what are my x-intercepts going to be? Negative 8 and negative 2. Okay. So if I go to graph that, I'm going to put a point at negative 8, 0, and negative 2, 0. Now there's two ways we can find the vertex. What form did we initially start in? Standard form. And how do we find the vertex in standard form? How do you find the vertex in standard form? That's what we've done the last couple days. What formula? Negative b over 2a. So we can continue to do that. Let's do that for this one, and then we'll talk about the other way. So if I'm going to use negative b over 2a, I know a is 1 and I know b is 10. Right? So negative b over 2 times a, which is what? Negative 5. And that's the x value of your vertex. And how do we get y? Plug it in. So y equals negative 5 squared plus 10 times negative 5 plus 16. Negative 5 squared, 25. 10 times negative 5, negative 50, plus 16. What do you get when you plug that into a calculator? So it's 25 minus 50 plus 16. Negative 9. So my vertex is at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Negative 9. Let me move this up. Sorry, that's what is that what I said? Negative 5, negative 9, sorry. Can you see the shape of your graph? So you don't need 2 additional points. We can draw in our parabola. Based off the equation, is it supposed to open up? Is it supposed to be a normal graph? Yeah. Okay, it is. Now, I'm going to show you one other way to do I'm going to talk about one other way to do the vertex. If you like this way, continue to do it. We all know, and we've talked about it for weeks, that parabolas have symmetry. Do you agree with that? Okay, so if these are symmetrical around my vertex, that would mean that they're the same distance away, right? Do you agree with that? So if I look on my x-axis, how many spots away are each of these points from that x value? So it's 6 total, so what would the middle be? If there's 6 total spaces, what's half of that? What's the middle? 3. So if I count 6 spaces or 3 spaces away, what point am I at on the x-axis? Negative 5. Wasn't that the x value of my vertex? Then I can just plug that in to find the y value without doing negative b over 2a. So if you know that the vertex is going to be in the middle, you can find the x value and plug it just back in for y. If you're like, I have no idea what you just said, then you need to use negative b over 2a. Okay? And that's okay. But I'm giving you other options. Okay, so I would like you to find the x-intercepts for number 2. Find the vertex and graph it. So find the x-intercepts, find the vertex, and graph. On top is negative 12. On the bottom is 4. I have a 1x and a 1x. What two numbers multiply to negative 12 and add to 4? 6 and negative 2. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. 6 minus 2 is 4. So in factored form, I have x plus 6 and x minus 2. What are my x-intercepts? Negative 6 and positive 2. So I'm going to go to negative 6 and put a point, and positive 2 and put a point. To find my vertex, negative b over 2a. So negative 4 over 2 times 1, which is negative 2. And then I think when you plugged it back in, you got negative 16. I don't know why you're packing up. Please stop. You'll be fine. So I have 4 minus 8 minus 12, which gives me negative 16. It's not on my graph, so I'm just going to put a point down here because I know it's down here somewhere. You can't see that. Connect those points. So that's what you're doing for your homework. We don't have time to do the back two today. We will probably go over them before your quiz tomorrow. But you need to attempt the 8 problems on your homework. Okay? You're finding intercepts and the vertex and plotting those points.